And I'm going to start the meeting now. Welcome to the meeting of the Area Planning Committee South and West of Thursday the 19th of November. I'm the Chair, John B. Clare. Can I ask all members to make sure that their microphones are muted, except when you speak? And can I also ask that when you start to speak, just introduce yourself. This is going to be recorded and it will be available on YouTube for, I think, 6 months. I'm going to ask now the officials to introduce themselves, and so we can know who we're dealing with. Perhaps we can start with Claire, and then if I can't see many of you, if you can just shout up and tell us who you are, please. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Yes, I'm Claire Cuskin, the Legal Advisor to the Committee.
Morning. John Byers, I'm the Planning Team Leader for the South West area.
Hi, it's Mark O'Sullivan, Senior Planning Officer, South West area.
Hi, I'm Dave Stewart. I'm the Highways Development Management Officer.
Thank you. Mark, are you going to be taking both of the items today?
No, I'm taking one, John.
Right, you're taking the first one, are you, John?
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I remind everybody that you are on camera and you are permanently on camera. If you're worried about that, you can turn your camera off. I've been asked to take... oh, no, we've got other things to do first. Apologies for absence. Kirsty, you didn't introduce yourself. Mr. Charlton. You there?
Hi, yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Liz Brown.
Thank you very much. Have we got any substitute members?
No substitutes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Has any member a declaration of interest?
John, I think I should declare an interest as I represent Shildon and Dean Valley. It's Shirley Quinn, Councillor Shirley Quinn.
Claire, I don't think that that's a declarable interest. Can you give us advice on this, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Councillor Quinn, is the declaration just that you are a representative of Shildon and Dean Valley?
That's right,
That's your sole interest? No, I think that's fine.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Where a councillor has no interest over and above the rest of the people in their ward, any other, so you don't need to declare an interest. Minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September. We've all had a chance to read them. Is there any member who wishes to bring up any issues from those minutes, or can we just agree them?
Agreed, Chair. Agreed, Chairman.
Agreed.
Thank you, Kirsty. If you can take two of those names as proposer and seconder, please. And now we move to the applications to be determined. I have been asked, for obvious reasons, to take item 5B before 5A. Can I have the committee's agreement to that, please?
Agreed.
I'm going to assume that the silence means yes. Thank you very much indeed. Item 5A is an extension to 25 West End, Sedgefield, Stockton-on-Tees. I'm going to just preface our discussions with a comment, if people will just indulge me. This is a terribly sad application, because we have in front of us, ladies and gentlemen, one family who believe that their future happiness depends on this being accepted, and another family who believes that their future happiness depends on it being rejected. And as I often say in these meetings, planning is a heartless thing, because what it does is it chooses between one or the other. And so somebody's going to go home disappointed and upset after the meeting today. To the people, to the applicant and the objector, all I can say is that the people in front of you are instructed by the Code of Conduct not to have made their mind up. and neither are they going to be making up their mind on whether they like you or dislike you or personal reasons. The issue we have before the planning committee today is simply we have an application in front of us. There are a set of planning rules. Does this meet the planning rules or does it not meet the planning rules? And they will be making their decision objectively, and hopefully the process will assure you that you got a fair hearing. And to members, it's very difficult, but if we can just assure the people, the members of the public of our professionalism. Can we hear first, John Byers, can you tell us all about this, please?
Yeah, okay, Chair. As I say, I'm standing in for the case officer today, and as probably people know in the planning department, I'm the least IT savvy person in the department, so I'll see if I can load this up first. I can't see it.
Neither can we, John.
No.
Let me know if you need to help, John. Come here, try and get it up.
Let's see if this comes up. No, that's no.
Oh, we've got some pictures there.
Mark, if you where is that?
I'm glad that the officers are assuring the members of the public of our professionalism. Mark, are you able to bring that up?
Just bring it up now for you, John. 2 seconds. You got it there?
Right. That's it there. Thank you.
No problem.
Right. Sorry about that, folks. Right. So this is a householder extension, householder planning application for a 2-storey rear extension and window alterations at 25 West End, Sedgefield. The site's just located to the southwest of the village centre, so you've just off to the east on your screen, you've got the village green and St Edmund's Church and the shops. And it relates to a large double-fronted mid-terrace property. You can see that there's various curtilages at the back of these properties. Sedgefield's known for its Burbage plots, long, narrow sort of gardens, and this kind of resembles much of that. There's the aerial photograph, which just shows what's on the Ordnance Survey map, if you can move on from that, Mark. Right, there's the front of the property, as you say, double fronted. It's got some casement windows at the moment and also a bow window, and it's intended to replace those with a sliding sash windows and also a bay window, akin very much to what's on the neighbouring property, which would bring it back to its more traditional best. That's the rear of the property. You can see it's been much altered. It's had a 2-storey extension in the roof space in the last 10 years, and there's also 2 additions at ground floor level, a conservatory and a kitchen extension, which I think are problematic. That's just another one of that. So we've moved on to the relationship with the neighbouring property at number 23 there. You can see the windows on the neighbouring property. The ground floor one closest to the boundary wall is a kitchen, but it leads through to a dining room. There's also, which is also served by a large bay window on the south elevation of the property. Then as you go up, you've got the bathroom window, and then next to that is a full length a landing window, and then there's some sort of rooms in the roof space. You can see that house, unlike the other one, hasn't been extended at all, and it's probably got its original sort of rear elevation there, but it's quite a spacious plot. Next one, please. That's a shot taken out of the kitchen window, looking across to where the extension would go. You can probably just see the finial, which marks the end of the existing conservatory, and you would be able to see the single-story addition from this window. But if you took a line, a midpoint in the window, 45 degrees, then the two-story element of the proposal would be set behind that line. Okay, and that's just a picture showing the garden, the raised garden. A section of that would be excavated back as part of the proposal. I think we're just showing there that some of this vegetation, which is there currently, obviously contributes to the character of the back gardens. That would be removed, including the willow tree, which would be subject to being unstable as a result of these excavation works, so it's got to be taken out. So they're the existing elevations, which give effect to what you've just seen on the photographs, and these are the proposed elevations. You can see that the extension does look a bit squat and box-like. Well, that's partly as a result of trying to keep the roof levels down to minimise the impact on the neighbouring property. You can see that the first floor addition, as originally it was intended to be the same length as the single-story addition, but it's been set back just to about 2.69 metres from the back wall of the house, and also set in a metre from the edge of the wall as well. Next one. And I think the plan possibly shows it in a bit more detail. There's the on the left-hand side, the picture of the window with the 45-degree angle to the first floor element of the extension, and then on the plan you see it all together with the two additions and also the garden area, which would be sort of excavated out to create the patio area. Okay. So in terms of consultation responses, we've not had any objections from internal consultees, and Sedgefield Council haven't made any comments. Sedgefield Civic Trust comment on detailed design issues, and they're okay with the window changes at the front, although for some reason don't like the grey colour, which is already there. And they've just made a comment about overdevelopment at the back of the site. We have the one letter of objection, which has already been circulated to members by Mr. and Mrs. By Mr. and Mrs. Boyle, and I think they're going to be speaking later on, so to expand on their points. Next one. Right. Yeah, I mean, John said at the start of the meeting that this is always difficult, and I think we appreciate that as the planners as well. We understand that the applicant wants to replace substandard accommodation, which is past its best in many respects, and wants to create modern functional living space. And yet the neighbour wants to maintain existing amenity standards and fears the worst in terms of the works going forward, and also the construction disruption and damage. But on the balance of the planning considerations, we feel that an acceptable compromise has been reached here, or can be reached. And the scheme, in terms of summary, in design terms, it's acceptable. The main extension is contained to the rear and won't be seen from public views. So that's okay. The changes to the front would enhance the property by bringing in traditional features which have been lost over time. And while the rear addition, as you've seen, is relatively large, we think given its position and its orientation on the north side of the property, the fact that it's been set back significantly and the existing boundary treatments, which include this large wall, it's not considered that the amended proposal would have an unacceptable impact on neighbour amenity in terms of loss of light or dominance. We have taken into account the representations that have been submitted so far and consider that the proposal would satisfy the provisions of the County Durham Plan, Policy 31, and the Residential Amenity Standards document, and also the NPPF. So we recommend it to you, therefore, subject to appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's very full. Members of the committee, nobody's indicated that they wish to speak. Can I remind you that if you wish to speak, you put RTS in the chat function. That's something we're all familiar with now. I would think it would probably be best not to ask any questions at this stage anyway. I have no parish or town councillors who wish to speak. No local members are speaking. So with everybody's agreement, please, I'll pass straight to the objectors, Mr. and Mrs. Boyle. Hello, are you still with us, Mr. and Mrs. Boyle?
Hi, yes, hi, it's Leslie Boyle.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's lovely to see you. You're at the top of my screen.
Hi.
Now, I don't know how you're going to do this. You can do it how you want. Are you going to speak, Mrs. Boyle, for the entire 5 minutes?
Yes, I am, yes.
Well, what will happen is that we're very anxious to hear what you have to say. And it will be taken into great consideration. What will happen after 4 minutes, Kirsty will shout in a good loud voice at you, 1 minute left. Now, when you're unfamiliar with the situation, sometimes that can throw you. Don't let it. Just start at the beginning of the sentence again and plough on, and it'll just give you a chance to see where you are. So we'd love to hear what you have to say, please, Mrs. Boyle.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Robinson for calling this to committee. We really appreciate all committee members listening to what we have to say. Firstly, I want to say that, I know it is a very difficult situation. We have lived next door to the Nuttalls for, I think it's about at least 12 years, and we see them as very good friends of ours, or we certainly did. And I think it's just been quite a stressful situation. This is nowhere, the fact that we're objecting to this proposed development is not a personal objection. It's just to protect what we see as important features of our home, that, all our money is ploughed into this home. We've lived there for 18 years and we adore our home and want to continue to live there. We wouldn't have also had an issue with the neighbours' development if it had been on the existing footprint of the current extension, because we understand that that extension is over 10 years old. And, the conservatory. So as I said, we wouldn't have had a problem with a single storey extension on the original footprint of the current extension, the existing extension and conservatory, and the sort of the courtyard area in between. If it had continued to be at a 90-degree angle to our property. Kevin and I are greatly concerned, really, more at the fact that we feel that this development is really quite a large development. And as the property has already been overdeveloped, as in the roof was lifted up a few years ago, which has already, impacted us in a negative manner. So we strongly feel that this is a kind of serious case of overdevelopment. It's going to be quite overbearing and dominant in structure, which is, I know obviously John Byers mentioned there that the chair of the Civic Trust also stated that he felt that this was an overdevelopment, overbearing and too dominant in structure. So as part of the development, I know the neighbours said that the new build will be encased and obscured by the boundary wall, which is an ancient boundary wall, actually, because the properties are sort of circa, I think they were built in about 1850. So you can appreciate the properties are old, and the boundary wall is very old, and obviously the foundations won't go down that far. But it won't be fully encased, and it definitely won't be obscured by the boundary wall. As you can see, I don't know if you can see my plans there, but which obviously John Byers mentioned, but obviously we will be seeing the development above the wall quite substantially. The neighbours obviously mentioned their damp courtyard, which we appreciate, because we also suffer from, dampness because the gardens are raised, but the proposed elevation and lack of sunlight that we'll give to our patio also concerns of flood risk and damage and risk of collapse of the boundary wall, because this proposed development, the foundation is going to have to be dug quite deeply. And also, when the roof was lifted up a number of years ago, which was, as you can see from the plans, is quite high above our existing roof. And we already get water running off the lifted roof, which creates damp in our bathroom. So we are concerned that the runoff of water for the new roofs will also cause extra damp into our already damp courtyard that we also have as well. The other point, the planning officer did some sunlight assessment drawings, which were circulated, so I'm hoping all the committee members have seen them. And she mentioned that the shading that comes into our property over the garden, and we have a very, very small garden, and I think this is the point as well. So number 25 garden wraps right round ours, so we already suffer from a huge amount of shading to our property. So, this development will just practically we will have a tiny bit of light left in our back garden after this development. So, I appreciate I haven't got much time left, but, we just want to say that the logistics of the build as well, we're very, very worried about. There's no back access. There's approximately 25 tonnes of earth that's got to be dug out. And there was also proposals of a 7-ton digger being craned over the house, which we're very worried about the danger that would cause potentially to our properties and our vehicles, as well as being basically shrouded in darkness for the rest of our days. As I said, it's an original property. We've lived there for 18 years. It's nearly 200 years old, and, it already has small Georgian windows at the back. And we just don't want to be shrouded in darkness. But as I said, if it had been a single-storey extension on the existing footprint, we wouldn't have had a problem with it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I think I've maybe used up my 5 minutes now.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyle. You were very coherent and very persuasive. Thank you. You've done the best you could.
I'm quite nervous, so.
You couldn't have done any better.
Thank
you so much. Now, the next people I'm going to ask to speak are the Nuttalls. Hello, are you there, Mr. and Mrs. Nuttall?
Hello, yes, we are.
Thank you. Are you both going to speak, or is just one of you going to speak?
I'm just going to speak at the moment, thank you.
Well, Mrs. Nuttall, it'll be, we will listen just as carefully to what you have to tell us as we did to Mrs. Boyle. The rules are the same. After 4 minutes, Kirsty will interrupt you. Don't be thrown by it. Just gather yourself together and finish off. Thank you very much. Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Nuttall, we're anxious to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, we'd like to thank the planner, Jane, for her concise and detailed report. She has addressed all of the objections made and provided a detailed response as to why they are unfounded, in our opinion. We'd also like to assure our neighbours that a great deal of thought has gone into the actual plans and logistics, which will minimise and disrupt the disruption to all, and which will protect the integrity of the existing buildings. Just to confirm, with regard to the foundations, the architect has proposed that it's going to be rafted. So rather than the 10 to 15 feet excavation, it will only be 2 feet, which will be dug out for the foundations. And I know that was a concern to Leslie, that the foundation is going to be very deep. Well, they're not, because it's going to be rafted. And the reason for the extension really is to improve the property whilst having regard to the neighbours, And this is the reason why we've revised the plans on 2 occasions already and are now happy that the final proposal meets with the planning guidelines. When we purchased the property 12 years ago, we identified a number of things that we wanted to improve over the years. As you see from the photographs, there's a conservatory which is showing signs of age with a number of double glazed units which are shot, and it's hot in the summer, cold in the winter. So we'd like to take that down. The existing kitchen roof is flat and unfortunately it leaks in and has done for years. We spent £2,500 on it 18 months ago and it still leaks in. So that's what we want to take out. It's been up for about 20 years, I think, and it's not been updated. The courtyard between the kitchen, as has already been said, is very damp and unusable. Our garden is elevated about 2.5 metres and it's got very steep steps into it, which are very dangerous for young and old. And the idea is that we excavate and do a gradual path which leads up into the garden. We may well be preserving the willow tree. It's not our design for the willow tree to go. I know it was mentioned there, but we would quite like to keep the willow tree, but just trim it back because it's a beautiful tree and there's no point in taking the tree down unless we really, really have to. We also inherited an old Saniflow bathroom that is very loud. The shower leaks into the dining room. And that is one of the things that we want to take out completely. So to improve our property, we basically want to build a modern living kitchen utilising the space currently occupied by the kitchen, courtyard and conservatory. The extension will be only 1 metre deeper than the current footprint of the kitchen, and excavating part of the garden with the new steps will allow easier access into our garden and a usable patio. We currently have a small low-ceilinged room which we use as an office, which is the upstairs, which is really the 4th bedroom. We wish to utilise this as a Jack and Jill bathroom to service the existing bedroom and the proposed new double bedroom, which is going to be the 2nd floor extension. That will still keep the house as a 4-bedroomed house. So therefore we don't see it as overdeveloping, merely improving the property significantly and readdressing issues that we have and putting them right. So, and the digger, Leslie was talking about the digger there. We've been told that the digger would be no more than 2 tonnes. And it is something that the company advises that people do every day. It's somebody's everyday job to get a digger into a back garden when there's limited access. The rubble that is coming out. The rubble is coming out straight through the house. We will be boarding up inside the house and the rubble will be coming out on a conveyor belt into a skip outside, which will just rotate to a local farm who wants to take all the rubble for groundworks. And that's all I've got to say, really. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nuttall. That again was very coherent and very clear. Thank you. You've made a good account of yourself today. Now, what I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to turn to the members of the committee. Welcome to you all. Can we start with questions only? And then perhaps we might members move to making statements. Are there any? Does anybody have any questions of the objector or the applicant or of the officers which they wish to make? If you put RTS in the meeting chat, I can bring you in. Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions, I think, really for John, Planning Officer. John, is it possible to pull up the proposed elevations drawing on the screen, just so I can have we can have a look at those again, because I think these are really important. That's the ones, yeah. Okay, so just a few questions, really. You mentioned in the summary of the application, your presentation, that the first floor projection is reduced. Now, is that a reduction over what was proposed or what is existing on the site? That's the first question. The second question is, will there be any direct overlooking of the Boyles property? And that's from windows into areas in the Boyles property. This final question is about the boundary wall. I know it's been mentioned that there may be issues with the stability of the boundary wall as a result of the application, and the applicant did mention that in her presentation as well about rafting, I believe it is. But is there any evidence or engineers' reports or anything of that that would suggest that there could be a problem with that boundary wall? And finally, the final point is, with that first floor projection on the east elevation of the building, how big is the additional area of built form going to be overlooking the Boyles property compared to what's there at the current time? So just a few questions there, if you could just talk us through, that'd be very useful, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, so the setback at first floor level is originally was going to extend right the way out to the same point as the single story. So it's being cut back at first floor level. So that's part of the proposal. The existing wall is behind that. In terms of overlooking, then there's no windows on the side of the extension, and the windows looking out from the back of it wouldn't create any overlooking issues for the Boyles property. Okay. In terms of the wall, I mean, you've heard what the applicant said about their architect and the builders. I did speak to our senior building control officer, and he was of the view that this wouldn't present any, unusual sort of problems if it was done right by proper builders. So the integrity of the wall would be fine. And clearly, the boundary wall at the moment is 2.5 meters high, and what we're talking about is adding another 2 meters onto the top of the eaves of this with the extension, and then the roof sort of slopes back into the midpoint of the property. So yeah, it would be sort of going up by another 2 meters at that one sort of 2.5 meter projection level.
So it's going up 2 meters by 2.5. So you're talking about additional, I don't know what's that, five square meters of additional built form. Yeah, over towards the Boyles property. Okay, that's great. Thanks, John.
Right. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. It's questions for the officer, really, for my peace of mind. The shading and the sunlighting, is that still in planning rules only over your living area, or will it be concerning for this, the back area over the dining room and things like that? It was just a question for my peace of mind.
Yeah, well, we've got this rule of thumb, the 45-degree sort of angle, and basically, if the extension's set behind that, it's not expected to generate major issues in terms of overshadowing. In addition to that, we've done a test using sunlight indicators, and that shows that the existing building, which is obviously raised to 3 stories, already creates a sort of shadow, and this smaller projection below that is only going to create some extra shadowing in the midpoint in the garden for about an hour in the afternoon, and then as the sun moves round and behind the building, it will become much less. So there will be some additional shading, but we don't consider that it's so significant that would warrant a refusal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland, because I had the same question. I'm just going to come back and ask for a further clarification on that. I understand that there is little or no difference in the shading to the windows but Mrs. Ball specifically mentioned in their letter made a greater point of this, that what's upsetting them is the deprivation of light to the back garden. Now, you've said that this will be, and you mentioned an hour and things like that, but can you, I've got a planning issue. How big a factor in the planning decision will be the loss of sunlight to their back garden? Or does planning only look at loss of light to windows?
No, we can look at loss of light to back gardens and usable space, but it's a case of how significant is that in the scale of things throughout the day, throughout the year, and given that this is a sort of, this point of the garden isn't right near the house where people come out and use it a lot. It's a smaller area further up the garden, and the balance judgment is that given the additional shading that will be created for this limited period of time, that isn't in itself sufficient to warrant refusal.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Maitland. That was a very prescient question. Councillor Ivan Jewell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ivan Jewell, representative for Burnop Field and Dipton Division. I had 3 questions, but 2 of them have already been answered. I had the sunlight one and also the integrity of the wall, but thank you very much, John. You've clarified that. The only other question that I had was the comment which was made about the runoff and dampness. I would imagine that what we have is we have a drainage system in there which will accommodate the runoff. Is that correct, or isn't it correct?
Yeah, I mean, building regulations approvals needed for this extension, and all that has to be covered within the building regs, and there's no reason why that shouldn't be done. The drainage is shown to be inside the wall, and you know, it's not really a planning issue, but there's ways and means to deal with the drainage issues from the roofs, the water from the roofs.
Thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Jewell. Councillor Jim Atkinson.
Hi, good morning. This is Councillor Jim Atkinson from Makeley Feast. The question's been asked already. I just want to go along the lines of the lighting thing. I think John's fairly clear that they're quite happy with the situation relative to the light. I was just a curious thing for me. I noticed at a time of day that they did the testing. I was wondering if this building might have an effect on the time of year when they did that. Should there be a specific time of year, given that, you know, the way the sun moves and it's lower and higher in the sky, if that came into it at all, or whether it's just totally irrelevant? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the sunlight indicators, you can take them at 2 periods in the year, but they're normally taken when the sun's, you know, at its highest and people are out using their sort of gardens. Clearly in the winter months, the sun's very low, and people aren't out in the gardens to the same extent, and that's why they aren't sort of taken. So the indicators have been taken for the periods, you know, in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's funny how I thought exactly the same, Councillor Atkinson. It's funny how we ask each other's questions for us. I've got one further question that I just want a statement on, John. A number of people have mentioned overdevelopment. And certainly looking at the plan, which we still have up in front of us, this is a whopping extension.
Yeah.
Though I notice relatively small in relation to the garden. What I'd like from you before I go to discussion, can you just explain to us the concept of overdevelopment and what overdevelopment might mean, and why you believe as planners that this is not overdevelopment? Can you just talk to that for us for a while, please, John?
Yeah. Okay, overdevelopment of the site is affected by the size of the site, firstly. So if you've got a small site and you're putting a lot into it, then that potentially can become overdeveloped. I mean, this is a very large, it's a large house. It's got a very extensive garden. Although this is a large build, in the context of that garden and how much amenity space is left, and it turns a corner as well, the garden, we wouldn't call it overdeveloped. Now, you can argue, as has been argued by the objectors, that the extension is dominant or overbearing, but we wouldn't say that the site's overdeveloped, particularly in the context of the fact that it's been extended already, so they're largely working within the existing footprint. There's a I think it's extending a metre more than the existing sort of kitchen. So that area has all been sort of built on at the moment, and okay, they're going up, but we don't think it's overdeveloped as such.
Thank you. So there's a difference between overdevelopment and overbearing.
Yeah.
And they've tried to address the overbearing nature by shoving back the first floor, and in fact, in that it occupies very little more than the original footprint in a large garden. You don't believe it's overdevelopment. Thank you very much indeed for those clarifications. I have nobody else who seems to be wanting to ask questions. So members, can we move now to comments and proposals on this? I need somebody to speak about what you think about it and whether we ought to accept it or reject it. Councillor Jim Atkinson.
Yes, Chair. I have to say this. Your opening comments were exactly right. I couldn't separate these. Certainly, if, from a neighbour's point of view, if it was me, I'd be saying no all day long. From an applicant's point of view, it's progress, it's improving your building. I'd love all day long to say abstain. It's just not something I do. So I'm looking for an excuse to say yeah on either side. I'm only hoping that somewhere along the line the planners have got it dead right, and at some point maybe might make it easier if Mrs. Boyle wants to do the same. From a planning point of view, if we said yes to this, I'm happy to be wrong all day long, but that's the only thing I can come up with, right? I'm sorry about that. It's not much help.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. I think I can't see that there'll be many members of the committee who don't share your feelings. Councillor Ivan Jewell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm pretty much of the same mind as Councillor Atkinson on this one. I mean, the reality is that in terms of planning legislation, this application complies with it. And what we have is we have conditions to mitigate certain aspects of it. Therefore, I don't believe we can go any other way than agree with this application. And I would propose that that this is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jewell. Councillor Fraser Tinsley.
Sorry, Chair, if you just bear with me. Okay. Right, it's a difficult one, this, isn't it? I think we're all clear about that. I think what you have to do is you have to really take a step back in these situations, because it does get personal, because it's people who are affected in the day-to-day way in terms of their living, what happens with an application like this, as you mentioned, John. But really, you've got to balance up, haven't you? And when we've looked at this application, I think the pros and cons, and I'm trying to get my head around it. I think the first thing is to state that anybody who owns a property has a right to apply for planning permission to develop their building, as long as it's in accordance with the development plan and other material considerations, and that's established. The other thing is, when we look at the application itself, there are improvements to the front of the building, and I think that is a positive in the overall townscape of Sedgefield. And I think when we look at the back of the building, there are a number of things we have to take into consideration. One is the fact that we've established that there's no direct overlooking of the private space in the Boyles property. That is important because that can have a real impact on amenity rather than just overshadowing. When we look at it again, we've established that there's no additional impact upon the overshadowing of the windows of the property. So that's when the Boyles are in the property, there'll be no additional overshadowing of those compared to the existing situation. So really, it comes down to the issue of overshadowing into the garden space. I'll just go back, sorry, just the issue I missed out is the damp situation as well. I think we have to remember that this will be built, I think, as the planning officer mentioned, in accordance with the building regs. And that should actually has the potential to improve the situation with damp on the property, because that will be addressed in the application. And finally, there's no impact upon that wall that we've established as well. So again, very difficult, but I think I am coming down on the side of an approval in this situation. It's a fine line, but I think that's the way I'm going. But I will listen to any other comments that the councillors raise in the discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor George Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor George Richardson, Barnard Castle East. It is a difficult one. A really difficult one, particularly when it's near neighbours who are friends. But from my point of view, this is in a conservation area. It's affecting the Boyles amenity greatly. And from my point of view, I see it as, I know it's been described otherwise, but I see it as an overdevelopment. And I don't think I can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Maitland.
I think when we're looking at this, it is a very difficult one, but circumstances change. I mean, 12 years I've lived in that property, you know, your situation changes, things like that. You come to a point, do you update your property or do you move or something? You know, the balances, and it's difficult. It's also difficult for us. So, like, looking at all the things, I think I can go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I anybody else who wishes to speak? No. I have a proposal, but no seconder at the moment. Councillor Tinsley, you were sort of waiting to make your judgment. Was your sort of guarded approval, was that seconding the proposal?
I'll second Ivan Joe's proposal.
Thank you. I have no other proposals. Therefore, I'm going to take the proposal which has been seconded somewhat reluctantly, and I'm going to ask the solicitor, Claire Cuskin, to take the vote. Claire, I know that Councillor Blakey has left the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I'll take it in alphabetical order, so it's in line with the officer recommendation. First of all, Councillor Atkinson, are you for or against the proposal?
Yeah, from the finest of lines, I'd be for the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Huntington?
Yeah.
Councillor Huntington, are you there?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Jewell?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth?
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Tinsley?
For the application.
Thank you. And Councillor Zare?
Sorry to report, but I've had a technical issue that I've missed a good half of the debate that's gone on, so I'm not sure how I'm fixed. Am I allowed to vote?
I'd advise you against voting, Councillor Zay.
Sorry?
I'd advise you against voting if you haven't been able to hear most of the presentation and debate, Councillor Zay.
Right, okay. I shan't vote on this one. Apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom, Councillor Zay.
Chair, in that case, unless you wish to vote, I make that 8-1 in favour of approval.
Thank you very much indeed. The application is therefore approved. I would like to just say something before we say goodbye to the Boyles and the Nuttalls, and it's this, that more important than this extension to your enjoyment of your properties, and that is both of you, is the relationship one has with one's neighbours, and sort of a relationship of hostility and enmity will ruin both your lives. And to the Nuttalls, you'll get your extension, but if you fall out with your neighbours, it will not be as happy a home to live in. And the Boyles, if you allow this to destroy your relationship with your neighbours, and if you allow every time you look out it to destroy the quality of your life, you will lose much more than just the light to your back garden. And I would appeal to the Nuttalls, please be conscious that everybody in this room sympathises with the Boyles situation, and we would be just like the Boyles if we were in the Boyles house. And please, as you move forward to make good on this application, make sure that you take care of the Boyles' feelings and worries, that you are assiduous to that. And to the Boyles, please understand that this was absolutely in line with planning application rules, that the Nuttalls are doing nothing wrong at all. They're doing what the law allows them to do, and please learn to live with what that is and try to put this confrontation behind you. Thank you very much indeed. God bless you both. I wish you the best in the future. And now, with the committee's permission, I'm going to move to item 5A, land southeast of William Street, Auckland Park. May I do that, please?
Thank
you very much indeed. This is an issue. I have only one person who's going to speak to this. Mark, could you give your officer's presentation, please?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to get the system to work again. It's crashed. Bear with me, guys.
I hate Teams. Zoom is much better.
Mark, I can have a go at trying to upload it if you
Oh,
want.
right. I've got the blue screen of death going on right now. Thank you.
Can we edit the YouTube? I wonder. Here we go. Here we go.
Might need a legal opinion on that, John.
I suspect you're right, Councillor Tinsley. Right, Mark, it's up.
Thank you for this, guys. Okay, so thanks, Chair. We have an outline planning application, all matters reserved, for the erection of 19 dwellings on land southeast of William Street in Auckland Park. Members are reminded that outline approval was granted by the committee in May 2012 for 20 dwellings on the site, with subsequent reserved matters approved in June 2015, which this approval was never implemented, hence the current application. So here's the application site edged red. It's located in between residential property to the southeast, southwest and northwest, with open countryside to the northeast there. The next slide will show aerial photograph of the area, again showing the residential character of part of the site, and the rest is obviously open countryside. The access is taken from the road to the northwest. The first photograph there, looking across the application site with residential property to the right there and at the far end of the site. The next photograph, looking southeast across the site again with residential properties beyond, and that is the rear of St. Philip's Close. The next photograph, we have the access road which would serve the site. That is looking southwest, and the next photograph is the same road but obviously looking the other way. The access to the site will be taken just to the right there, and we have William Street and their gardens and allotments to the rear on the left. The next photograph just shows the allotments and the gardens. That would be the view as you come out of the site to turn left or right onto the access road. So the next slide, we have an indicative site layout plan. It's obviously indicative, but it shows how 19 dwellings could be accommodated onto the site and served off the central access road. Obviously, we take into account separation distances and amenity space standards at the reserve matter stage, but this indicative site layout does show that it is reasonable to assume 19 dwellings can be accommodated onto the site. Okay, next slide, please. We have 3 letters of objection received from local residents, with a summary of the points raised set out within the case officer's report. We've had no objections from the list of consultees there, who raised no objections subject to condition. Ecology recognise that the proposals will result in a loss of biodiversity, with no opportunities to offset this loss through habitat creation on site. They've requested that a commuted sum be agreed and secured via Section 106 unilateral undertaking. So in summary, the application is to be determined in accordance with the relevant policies of the County Durham Plan and paragraph 11C of the NPPF, which requires applications to accord with an up-to-date development plan to be approved without delay. The current proposals essentially represent the resubmission of a previously approved scheme for the site, although they involve a reduction in the number of proposed houses from 20 to 19. And the current proposals would secure an improved range of house types, affordable housing provision, off-site open space and biodiversity contributions. Although it is outline in nature, the indicative plans do show a site layout which can be achieved to meet highway requirements, building relationships and privacy standards. All representations have been carefully considered within the officer's report, and proposals would satisfy the provisions of the County Durham Plan and the NPPF. So we recommend approval of the application, subject to condition and a list of Section 106 obligations to secure 15% affordable housing on the site, a financial contribution of 33,201 towards off-site open space and recreational provision, and 2,563 towards off-site biodiversity improvements. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Have we, first of all, have nobody wanted to talk about this at all, neither the applicant nor no objectors, so it's straight to members. Can we start with questions first for the officer? Only questions, please. Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, John. One question, and I'm sure this has been covered in the context of the extant permission which is with it on the site, but I've just had a look at the intramap system that we have as I've been listening to the presentation, the GIS system, and it would appear that the road, the access to the development will be taken from is not an adopted highway. It's an unadopted road. And I was just wondering if we could first of all confirm if that is the case, and also what implications that could have for the application, particularly in the context of the ownership of that road and the ability to access over that road. But importantly, the fact that access is not applied for in this application, because it's quite unusual, and it's an outline application where access is not included in the application. As I say, thanks. Just on that point, I may come back in after I've heard the explanation on that. Thank you, Chair.
Mark.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So obviously, just to clarify, Highways definitely didn't object to the application. It's not a classified road. I've noticed Dave Stewart is in the call, so if he wants to add something, he can. But they obviously, you're right, it is an outline application, all matters reserved. We can't consider matters of access at this time. but for the purpose of the outline application, they do assess the likely traffic movements associated with 19 dwellings that would serve that site. They haven't raised objections to the likely movements that would use that road. As you'll see from the photographs before, that the road that does serve the site is pretty new. It does look like it's been sort of recently relayed. There's a footpath to the side of it. I agree it's not classified, but the highways did consider that access was suitable to serve 19 units. I don't know if Dave wanted to add anything or not.
Yeah, I'll say a few words, Mark. The road was improved by the council in 2011. It was in a relatively poor state, and at that time, I think it was members in Design and Conservation Scheme money via the URR schemes at the time that were on the go. Improved it in terms of its width and construction, and basically maximised what could be done there. Yes, it's as Councillor Tinsley said, it is private currently, but the assumption is that it would be adopted as part of the Section 38 agreement between the developer and the council, and that can be done by a separate part of the Highways Act. Section 228 of the Highways Act can adopt a section of highway of unknown ownership if it benefits general development. So the principle of the access road was obviously considered at the time back in 2011, 2015 and now, and that aspect is unchanged. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I move to Councillor Atkinson,
if I could just come back.
Tinsley, you said you might want to come back on that.
Okay, I think I do know that the planning authority does have the ability to decline to determine an outline application if they think that the reserve matters that are not being considered in the outline are fundamental to the principle of the scheme. And I think this is an instance where access is pretty fundamental to the principle of development on that site. And I think I would have been more comfortable if access had been included, or the applicant was requested to include access as a matter considered at the outline stage, and reserving the other matters for later, because the other matters are absolutely appropriate for a reserve matter stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson.
Yes, Chair. Mine's just a curious question relative to the history that we've got here. It appears that is that outline permission agreed in 2012, reserve matters of consent agreed in 2015. Do we know what's taken him so long? Is there any reason? What's the hold-up?
Right. I think this is sort of rumour, but it's a different applicant now. So the previous applicant didn't implement the permission, and I think the land was sold. So I think we've got a brand new applicant now. If that's not the case, then there was probably economic reasons they didn't implement the original one.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Quinn.
Hello, yeah, there's two things that I just want to say. First of all, I'm pleased at the proposal about the recreational provision, because I do know that in that particular area there's been quite a few houses built, and that is one thing that has been omitted so far. So I do welcome that. The other thing was, I was just wondering if you could inform us of any content of the objections that's been received. I understand there's been 3 objections, so it was just to get a little bit of a flavour for that. Thanks, Mark.
No problem. Yeah, that's correct. I just wanted to elaborate on what you said there, that the current scheme actually does have a lot better things going for it than the previous in terms of contributions. In terms of the objections received, 2 seconds. So I'll run through a very quick summary of what they've said. So there was 3 letters of public objection, yeah, and it was mainly to do highway safety concerns over the suitability of the existing road infrastructure serving the site. What that relates to isn't necessarily the road that we've been looking at in the photographs, but it's the junction at the bottom where that links onto the main road through the settlement. The existing traffic and congestion resulting from the new builds nearby, and the impact of the additional works on the roads. And the other issues were considered to be disruption caused by construction traffic, which we can address through condition. We can limit sort of construction hours and make sure that there's sensitive construction methods. The other issues were lack of amenity space for the increase in population. As I've said, it's the site itself isn't going to provide amenity space other than the private amenity space. but in terms of public community space, we're getting this £33,000 contribution. And the loss of green space and subsequent impact on wildlife, ecology haven't objected. There's no ecological harm because we're getting the offset money as well of the £2,500. And in terms of loss of green space, it's not designated open space. It is clearly green space. It's a field, but it's not public open space. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks very
Mark.
much for the clarification. Thank you.
No problem.
If any member wishes to reflect on those, they are outlined in paragraph 33 of the report. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just at paragraph 19, the call authority recommend the imposition of conditions in the event of approval. Does that mean we've got mine workings to consider?
2 seconds. So yeah, they're pretty standard conditions by the call authority there. What happens is we consult the call authority if it is an area of high risk. They're all over the county. They've come back with the standard condition. They'll be doing sort of investigations to find out if further works are needed on the site. It doesn't necessarily mean there is sort of holes under the ground there, but they have to investigate it first. And then if they find out, they implement the measures to make sure the site is safe to build on.
Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Thank you. David Stewart, I have you down to speak, but I also have a thumbs up saying that you've spoken. I'm assuming that that was because you made your contribution and you don't wish to speak again.
That's
Councillor Ivan Jewell.
Thank you, Chair. I just have 2 clarifications that I'd like covering, please, and maybe it will be Dave Stewart again. Within the report, I read 2 points which referred to sort of highways and parking issue. The first was a comment by Highways, revisit the parking, and the second was the suggestion that a one-way system be introduced into that area. Could Highways comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure. The one-way system is basically not a candidate for anything that the council can impose because William Street is private. It's therefore not under the control of the Highway Authority. Therefore, it's not anything we could institute because it's essentially a private road. The other aspect I think you're referring to is the parking. The parking in the indicative layout doesn't meet the council's current parking standards. That doesn't mean to say that without alterations it could do, but that was flagged up at the time of the indicative plan just to alert the planners and the applicants to that issue in terms of any reserved matters application if they came in and assumed it was going to be acceptable. We wanted to highlight that to them. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Dave.
Councillor Tinsley.
Yeah, it's just going back on that last point. So the access road to this development, to the entrance to the development, the indicative entrance to the development, is over a roadway that has been improved through in 2012. But importantly, that roadway is not in the ownership, it's not been adopted by the local authority. But really importantly, it's not in the ownership or the control of the applicant. So I don't see how the process for adoption, concurrent with the development, as inferred by the officer, will be the process we go through, could occur if the owner of that roadway is not party to the discussions and isn't involved. So it just seems quite a very unusual situation. And I think that would have come up through an application process. Because that would have been included in the red line, and obviously there would be a notification issues with that as well. So I am concerned about this to a degree. Thank you, Chair.
The first thing I'd make, Councillor Tinsley, is that from what Mr. Stewart said, I don't think we know who owns the road. But the second thing is, before we go any further, Claire, as I understand it, there are situations where you don't need to know if certain permissions have been obtained because they are irrelevant to the actual planning permission. So we've dealt with things in the past where, entrance has been across an area of village green and there was no certainty that they would get permission to put any entrance down across that village green to get in. It didn't alter the fact that what you did was you judged the application on the merits of the application, not on the what-ifs about things like access and egress. Is this the same situation? Councillor Tinsley is bringing up a very important point, but is it essentially irrelevant to our consideration of this application, or is it part, as he would say, of highway access matters and therefore a critical part of the application? Can we have a judgment on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, I mean, from a legal perspective, my view is that the question of access would be a matter for the applicant to resolve prior to commencement of development. And if he couldn't legally obtain access to his site, then that's a private matter between himself and whoever is eventually judged to own that site. So that's not really something that we should take into account, generally speaking. The only circumstance in which I think we could possibly take that into account is if we were of the view as a local planning authority that there were absolutely no prospects at all of satisfactory access being obtained in those circumstances. That would be the only time we could take that into account. I'm not certain that we are in that position at the moment. However, that's a judgment for members.
Thank you. I mean, you may wish to come back on this, Councillor Tinsley. I'm quite happy to have a little discussion, but what strikes me about this access is there's going to be a massive problem, as you say, with adoption, because the road is not going to be brought up to a condition that will be able to adopt it unless we do it, because we don't know who owns the road. We won't be able to sort of bring it up to that permission to adopt it. Mr. Stewart, what will be the process of managing to get this to a point where we could actually adopt it, or are we looking at a situation where we'll never be able to adopt it?
Right. Let me hopefully clarify it for members. The road was improved in 2011, as I mentioned, and that was done to an adoptable standard in terms of the construction of both the footway and the carriageway at that time. So that aspect isn't an issue in terms of the future adoption of it. It is a private road currently, but we're also firmly of the view that it has highway rights established, public highway rights, which means that you and I could walk along there, drive along there, and we have a legal right to do it because of the passage of time. But separate to that, in terms of the ownership of sections of highway are sometimes not fully known, either because they're not registered or of some other means. And that's why there is a part of the Highways Act, the section 228 that I mentioned, which facilitates the adoption of highways where part or in full there is unknown ownership. And just to further expand upon that, the basis upon which that is done, there are notices posted locally inviting objections to the future adoption of the highway. Then there is the opportunity for those to be considered by the Highway Authority. Then ultimately those can be determined and considered at court. But essentially the basis of it is that there has to be a good means, a reasonable basis why the road should not be adopted. And I think in this case, in terms of the benefit it gives to existing residents, never mind the future application, I think the basis for such an objection would be relatively weak. So that aspect was considered at all times, including 2011 onwards, but the principle of access has never really been an issue for that reason, because we weren't of the view that there would ultimately be a basis where adoption of the access road and ultimately the application site estate road would be prevented.
Thank you. Members, that's why we have experts, officers on the committee. Claire, I'm going to leave you out for just 2 moments in case Councillor Tinsley, who clearly wants to comment on this, says anything that you would want to comment on. So I'm going to, with your permission, please, I'll take Councillor Tinsley first, and then we'll take you and draw this element of the discussion to a close. Councillor Tinsley?
Yeah, thank you, John, and indulging me here and other members, but I think it's really important, this, because I know that these issues emerge in all of our divisions, and problems with access, problems with ownership and things like this from time to time. And I just want to make sure we're ensuring at this stage that we're tying everything off that we can. But I have listened to the comments of the officer, and he's explained that there is a process that we can go through, and he's explained also that the likelihood of being able to adopt that highway, even if there was objections, if the owner was to emerge, is good. There's a strong likelihood that that would happen. I suppose my concern really is, I think a better process would have been if the access road had been included in the red line of the application, and we could have even imposed conditions that would relate to that in some way or other, and that would have made a cleaner situation. But we're in a situation now where I think, on balance, after having what I've heard, I'll be content to move forward with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tinsley. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. It sounds as if all of the issues are now resolved and that there's no further legal input needed.
Thank you. I have two questions, if members will indulge me. They're related to each other. Mark, it's an almost throwaway comment in paragraph 48. Given previous approvals have expired unimplemented, there is some concern that there is no clear evidence that this site is deliverable, particularly in the current environment. I'm drawing attention. I think it was Councillor Atkinson who pointed out that, you know, this site has had planning permission for some considerable period of time, and it has not been implemented. Generally, this situation is a big problem across the country and within the county. Can you give us your opinion on the weight we have to give to that sentence within our planning decision?
Okay, Chair. So, yeah, clearly deliverability is a test. The county can demonstrate that it does meet housing need. It has got enough houses coming forward. So on that balance, it's not essential that we approve this to meet them targets. But at the same time, we should be encouraging housing delivery, especially at this current time. The fact is that the applicants come in during this time to try and get the kickstart back on the site. We feel that, you know, whilst there could be economic issues resulting from COVID that puts a delay on it, the fact is they want to try and get this up and running now, and the introduction of 19 houses won't be that significantly detrimental to overall housing figures for the county. We can meet demand already, but it would be good to have more, especially in this area, considering the mix of house types and the contributions we're getting from the scheme.
Is the applicant a developer?
No, from what we're aware, it's a private landowner, so it's not like a big developer. But there's nothing to say that they won't secure permission and then sell the land on. It's an outline permission. But for 19 houses, it's more likely to be a smaller scale developer.
But that has all to be arranged yet.
All reserved matters.
And my second question very closely related to this, and it's condition 1, time limit. Application for approval of reserved matters shall be made to the local planning authority before the expiration of 3 years, beginning with the date of this permission, and development must begin not later than the expiration of 2 years from the final approval of reserved matters. So basically, we can be looking at 6 years before this takes back, because you can have, more than 5 years, because you've got 3 years to sort of get the reserved matters in. Then you're going to have some time discussing the reserved matters, and then you've got 2 years from the agreement of reserved matters. So this is could remain undetermined for five years. I'm just asking, the question is this a normal amount of time? Because the pressure from government is to stop this thing where we have approvals and then the land just sits there undeveloped for years and years and years. Is that 5 years in line with the County Durham plan? Is it normal?
Yes, Chair, put simply it is. It's a standard condition that we've used for a long time. As part of the application, we did consider reducing that 3 years to make sure that the houses were built quicker. and that things came forward quicker, but in the current time circumstances, it's just not reasonable for us to do that. So we've reverted back to the standard condition on this one.
Thank you so very much. Okay, then, can we have comments from the committee and move towards a resolution of this, please? Councillor Atkinson. You're on mute, Councillor Atkinson.
Yes, can you hear me now, Chair? Thank you.
I can.
Yes, the application is it's been agreed already before. It would seem a little bit churlish to knock it back once it's been agreed already and very little's changed. In fact, I think I heard some applause for the fact that it might have improved. There doesn't seem any real reason not to go with the officer's recommendation. But at the same time, like, you do get the feeling a little bit that somebody's playing games here. They must be wasting somebody's time somewhere along the line. But that's for them to think about. So if Councillor Tinsley made a proposal, I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
I don't think he did, actually, Councillor Atkinson.
Well, if he didn't, I'll make the proposal to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you so much. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yeah, I'll second that proposal, Chairman. You know, when something's been passed in the past, we can't not pass it a second time around or a third time around. On that basis, you know, can we just vote on it?
Thank you very much indeed. I have nobody, my screen is beeping at me, but I have nobody else indicating they wish to speak on by putting RTS on the chat line. Am I right in thinking there's nobody wishes to speak? We have a proposal and a second. Claire, could you take the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I'll do it in alphabetical order, in line with the proposal to approve the application. Councillor Atkinson, are you for or against that proposal?
I'll be for the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Huntington?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Jewell?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Tinsley?
For the proposal.
Thank you. And Councillor Zay?
For the proposal.
Thank you. Chair, that's unanimous.
Thank you. That therefore is approved. Can I thank the committee? You are spectacular. We've looked at two proposals here. You have gone into them in huge depth, and you have made the decision on absolute planning grounds. We are an exemplar committee, and sort of it's going to be on YouTube for everybody to see that. I have no more business. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much indeed.